Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Joyce A.M. Ejukonimu. I'll be co-hosting this same webinar today with my director, who will soon be trying to log in somewhere. Yeah, he's in the admin block to see all that. I can see our presenter, Professor Okolo, is around. I want to welcome everybody to today's seminar presentation. We're going to have a wonderful time, and the topic we'll be treating today is conflict-induced migration and its implication for regional stability and development. This presentation will be done by Professor Phillips O. Okolo, a professor of political science. Details will be from Niger Delta University. As we all know, as we usually know, the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Study is a center under National Open University of Nigeria. The center was established in 2020 through a seed fund from TED Fund. And since then, the center has been growing. Our main emphasis is on field-based research to impact policy foundation in Nigeria. We will focus on migration and global issues that are trending, issues that affect development. These are the main issues that we focus on. As a research hub, the center is engaged in research about migration and global studies, both internal and external issues. It's actually try as much as possible to make an impact. And for those of us that have been following this center all these years, we've come to realize that the center have been organizing programs aside from these webinars. We've had interactive section, dialogue program with stakeholders in the migration field, migration space. We've had conferences and workshops. We have our biannual journal that we actually float twice in a year, and so much. The core, as we have said earlier, is to actually focus on migration. Now, today we'll be looking at conflict-induced migration and its implication for regional stability. And our presenter today is very ready and well prepared. As I said earlier on, Professor Philip O. Okolo. Then now I'm going to take his profile. I'm sure Professor Philip is around somewhere. So I'll read the profile of our presenter today. I'm sure by the time we hear his name and get his profile, we know that he's actually ready and prepared to present today. Professor Philip O. Okolo is a professor of political science, development, peace, and security studies from the Department of Political Science, Faculty of Social Sciences, and the Director, Institute of Peace and Security Studies, Niger Delta University. He was the acting head of Department of Political Science, Faculty of Humanities, Social and Management Sciences, Edwin Clark University from January to November 2018, while he was on sabbatical. Professor Philip was born on the 21st July 1969 to the family of H. and H. Richman Godfrey Okolo, the Olotu of Tarakiri clan, and Mrs. Onogu Okolo, all of Ibediri Berry town, sorry about that, in Shagamu local government area of Bayelsa State. He had his early primary and secondary education in the community primary school and community secondary school, respectively, finished in 1988. Thereafter, the young Phillips O. Okolo joined the Nigerian Police Force in 1989. He voluntarily retired from the State Investigation and Intelligence Bureau, now State Criminal Investigation Department, in October 1997. And while carrying out a bachelor degree project on Nigerian police and corruption at the University of Port Harcourt, that was when he resigned in 1997. Okay. Now we continue. Professor Okolo holds a BSc honor degree in Political and Administrative Studies from the University of Port Harcourt, an MA degree in Peace and Conflict Studies from the prestigious University of Ibadan, Nigeria, has a certificate in Public-Private Partnership, PPP, at the Lagos Business School, Pan African University, Lekki, Lagos, Nigeria, and a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Political Science from Delta State University, Abraka, Nigeria. He is the pioneer National Publicity Secretary, Society for Peace Studies and Practice in Nigeria, and pioneer editor, auditor, Nigeria Institute of Public Relations by Esther State Chapter. Studies, Peace and Conflict Resolution, Environmental Conflict, Federal Studies, Public Administration, Multinational, International Relations, International Relations, Niger Delta Studies, Nigerian Government and Politics, Human Rights Issues, and Indigenous Studies, as he is currently researching on youth perspective on entrepreneurship and Nigeria. And to the governor of Bayelsa State on 14 February 2016. Assistant Chief Security Officer, Hotel Presidential. Sorry, I'll take that again. In February 2016, he was an Assistant Chief Security Officer, Presidential Hotel, Port Harcourt, of the Presidential Hotel, Port Harcourt. He's a pioneer public relations of remote activists of Ijaw nations. Professor Coley is a fellow Strategic Institute for National Resource and Human Development and a member of several other professional bodies, including the Nigerian Political Science Association, Center for African Peace and Conflict Resolution, California State University, International Society for Development and Sustainability, Japan, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, and so many other chapters, so many other fellowship and association. The presenter today is currently the Associate Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Niger Delta University, Wilberforce Island, Bayelsa State, Nigeria. So I present to you today Professor Phillips Okoyo, a professor from the Niger Delta University. He will be the one presenting a paper to us today, and the title of today's presentation is Conflict-Induced Migration and its Implication for Regional Stability and Development. Thank you as we all listen.
By way of definition, the introduction, I said that conflict-driven migration is a definite global phenomenon. And this fact is quite noted by different diverse scholars across the world. And as a matter of fact, over 114 million have been forcibly displaced globally as of 2023. The figure is still getting higher and higher. And as you could see, even the problems that are now happening, Iran and of course US and all that, as of today, will also ultimately lead to serious populations moving. That means that the figures are doubling, as it were. Displacement has also reshaped governance structures across the countries, economics across the country. Just this morning, you could see how the fuel prices are already skyrocketing. These are effects that will continue to be with us. But I think that a lot needs to be done. Increasingly, it has had protracted issues across the nations, as I said before. So by way of conceptualizing, we have looked at migration, and we look at migration from the perspective that people move across boundaries in different regions. Okay, some go very, very far off, and not only the fact that they move across boundaries of society, of countries, but you can also know that there are also displacement of people within internally. Internally, these are also happening within Nigeria. For example, people have had to then move to forcibly moved to different places. These are the issues. So, by way of defining conflict also, we look at it as an organized violence over incompatible goals. And of course, you can agree with me that conflict is here. It is difficult to actually remove conflict or obliterate it, as it were. But efforts are being made generally to see how it can be minimized, how it can be reduced. Now, the other concept we looked at is conflict-induced migration, and that is what we refer to as forced displacement due to violence. It may not be nearly due to only violence, but it could also be through some natural, events, like when issues of global warming that has affected, areas. People droughts and all that. People will then be forced to move to greener pasture. But this kind of movement is not because people want to move to greener pasture. People are now forcefully moved, which means that the movement is unplanned. It's unplanned, and therefore it can affect both the host regions and, of course, the communities that people are moving out from. Now, I will also look at development, the concept of development. And as I stated even in my inaugural lecture, development is a multi-dimensional issue, which has to do with human and structural progress. But in my inaugural lecture, I have defined development from 5 key parameters. And if you also go back to the UN, the development that has been so described by UN, you find that you will look at infrastructure, you will look at poverty, how poverty is being reduced, you look at health situations, you look at education, and you look at also economic growth. All of these issues are the issues that propel development. But if a society, for example, is reducing poverty to the barest minimum, that society is likely to attract people to migrate to. People will come to that place, and that society will give host. And again, when people move, you know that infrastructure will be affected because when people move into your country, because that forced movement, it is not planned, and therefore, what will happen to water? The water that people will consume will be affected. So a lot of issues are therein. Now, in terms of theoretical framework, this paper, use the human security theory, propounded by one scholar, particularly, it's an economist, actually, who propounded the theory as of 1994. Okay, he actually looked at it from about 4 dimensions, and as a matter of fact, there are several other theories that could have been very, very useful. For example, push-pull theory could have been useful. Political economy theory can also be useful. And then, of course, structural violence theory can also, by Gartner, can also be useful. But for the purpose of this work, we decided to anchor out, on the human security theory. And why do we have to do that? Because it focuses on individual safety and dignity. It also, focuses on how conflict will erode economic, health, and political security. It also look at displacement and how responses to a multidimensional insecurity can be mitigated. And of course, also the theory also look at how it links conflict to migration and development outcomes. So it is on the basis of this that we decided to anchor on this theory, because the other theories are also very useful. But then this theory appeared to encompass, for the purpose, it is well founded, And it is on that flank that we decided to anchor on this this theory, human security theory. And it was actually developed, several years ago, at least 1994, arising from the UN Human Development Report of that UNDP as at that year. Now, in terms of methodology, we applied qualitative research methodology design. The reason why we have to do this is that we cannot, migration, people have already moved. It is something that has already happened and well documented by different scholars, including my prof there, Professor Tijani, that I'm seeing, have documented all of this. Scholars like Albert, different scholars across the world have already written, and then reports have also emanated from different centers. For example, United Nations Committee on Refugees, and of course, World Bank, and of course, several other bodies, particularly in the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center also, have provided a lot of resource. And so we decided to anchor on this. And then the analysis proper is done thematically, particularly in a comparative basis. And of course, we look at also multi-regional cases or synthesis. Multi-regionally, we look at it because it is not only one area that these people are migrating or migrating to or migrating from. So the next thing we need to look at is conflict-induced migration in the globe. As I said before, conflict-induced migration has caused humanitarian and developmental challenges in the 21st century. This is true, very, very true. The outcomes of even this study and previous studies have well documented this. It has also forced, displacement, arising, which have actually reached unprecedented levels, due primarily to violent conflicts, civil wars, and persecutions around because of state fragility. Like Nigeria, even within Nigeria, you could see that because of the problems, Boko Haram, and of course the insurgency issues around certain areas, particularly people even move across the border. That is exactly clear, at this African sub-region. There are other regions, there are other within the African sub. When you get the full work, you will see what we have done. Now, there are patterns. Global in the Middle East readily comes to mind. Colombia's internal displacement to Eastern Europe, what is called, has also led to, and then if you go to that other crisis 23, you could see the patterns of people moving. And I think that this is really, really mind-boggling. I would believe what can be done to actually stem the tide is what, and you can see that in figures 1, figures 2.1 and figures 2.2, how this, the distribution regionally across the world, how people have been moving. Now, in terms of conflict-induced migration in Africa, specifically, the Sahel crisis, you can see what chart. And then if you come to South Sudan, you could see the protracted displacements around those areas. And of course, around Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and then etc. You could see. So the trends in forced displacement in Africa, you could see in that figure 3.3, the next figure, you could see the levels of forced, conflict-induced displacement in Africa. And you can, this is properly sourced from African Center for Strategic Studies, 2023, the next figure. Now, the implications for regional stability. Why I'm running is because of the network. Because of the network, I need to run. Implications for regional stability. We have, for example, political and governance implications. Political and governance implications. Yes, these movements have had severe implications for governance issues. And of course, another issue is the security implications it has brought to either the host nations or even to the nations that, the states that the people are migrating from. And then, of course, it has economic and developmental pressures. Because, for example, the nature of housing that will be available for the population within is a problem. So when people migrate into your country in those unplanned manners, it triggers problems of how people can have access to even water that they will consume, shelter that they will stay. Several other multiplier issues in terms of economics and so on and so forth. Social cohesion is also a problem. And of course, identity politics will also set in. And of course, interstate relations and regional diplomacy is also affected when things like that happen, particularly when people move into your country in an unplanned manner. And so protracted displacement and chronic instability is also an issue. There are, again, opportunities for regional cooperation can also will also arise. So if you look at the next figure, figure 4, clearly, situates the nexus between conflict and migration and implications that are therein. Okay, conflict, involves distortions, disruptions of livelihoods, as I earlier explained, and of course internal displacement too, and of course this international migration as people now move across borders. From within, they begin to move in that direction, and all that have implications for development outcomes. Now, the areas where these implications are situated are human capital and social services, as I stated before. For example, educational facilities may not be able to accommodate all the people that will come in because it's an unplanned out in terms of water, in terms of electricity, in terms of several other issues, will arise. So disruptions of education will also happen. And of course, both in the area they are migrating from and even where they are going into. Because if you, for example, have a structure, educational facility, for example, at the secondary or primary level, that's supposed to house 50 students. Now people have come in. The population that will now use those facilities would normally increase. And if there is no proper plan to mitigate that type of situation, it can then bring some type of stress. And of course, infrastructure stress, environmental stress, all of these issues are there. What about labor market competition? If the people that are coming in, for example, are more qualified to take offices, to take jobs that are readily available in the host settlements, host communities, what will happen? It will strain, it will bring an unhealthy competition that may lead to, you have already seen what happened even in South Africa, what has happened in Ghana, even quite recently, where Nigerians have been, even though they were not forced to leave. These are practical examples. Now, it has also a long-term development opportunities. Long-term development opportunities can also happen, if you plan properly. Now, How have all of this impacted on the development sector? You can see in the next figure. Looking at the scale you have seen, both in the education, health, employment, infrastructure, and security. It has implications around all those areas. And those implications can actually be turned to positivities. The migration it's not always negative. It can be turned to positivity with well planned and meticulously, followed. Now, the other implications are for regional stability. Now, because of these issues, it has strained governance, because a situation where people are people are moving into your country, and your budget cannot carry, for example, the state budget or state in this situation from the point of view of international relations. I'm talking about other countries because it's across the border. But again, as I said, even internally, if, for example, people are moving from Borno State to let's assume Benue State, for example, or put differently, to the neighboring states within Nigeria, it will strain their own planning. This is what we are saying. And but if well developed, it can also result to positivities. Even the security spillovers, is actually a problem. Again, it can also be a turnaround for the group if well planned. But in most cases, resources are not readily available, even in the host countries or host nations, to be able to plan to cater for the huge populations that come in. Then there's also identity politics, as I said before, and demographic shifts also are resultant effects. So interstate diplomatic tensions also arise, in very huge dimensions, policy implications for the way forward. I will want to suggest that we can strengthen regional legal frameworks. If we do that, in a manner that is cohesive, I think that we'll be able to overcome some of these issues. Because if all countries plan and meticulously, follow, through good governance, a governance structure that, take along all the people, a governance structure that does not leave people out, a governance structure that is inclusive, these conflicts would have been mitigated to the point wherein it will not escalate to the point where people will then be running out of their settlement. If people will have to move, they should plan their movement. For example, if doctors are migrating, there are issues that are making them to migrate. The fact that our country, for example, in the Nigerian situation, the wages and salaries that we pay, or put differently, the conditions of services are not optimally, therein for them to want to stay to render services commensurate to what they take home. That one, they are planning, although something is forcing them to move. But again, it is still somehow planned properly to move. But a situation where, as a matter of fact, even that one appeared to look as if things are forcing them to move. For example, even academics like my prof, sir, if we are not, if we are not patient and we want to decide to stay, some of us will also have to want to leave, because what we take home, but that one you are planning to move. But if a situation where things happen, that you did not even have to plan, then suddenly, trouble arose in your areas, and you now begin to want to migrate. Those type of situations, government can. What we are saying is that government can plan properly to ensure that those type of things, we don't get to those type of situations. No, we can also promote refugee economic integration. People who have come into our country, yes, we can integrate them and plan properly. If we plan properly, sometimes the wealth of experiences that some of them have also brought into our country, or the country where they are now hosted, can also be annexed for proper utilization that will lead to good development outcomes. You can also invest in host communities. Those who have migrated can do proper investment in their host communities, host settlements, if it is within in country, or even out country. They can invest, bring in their wealth of experiences, to bear. And then we can also address the root causes of conflict. What are the main causes? What are the issues that are propelling people from moving? So if we stem them nip them on the bud, seriously, without allowing the conflict to grow. So, like some scholars will say, that even though we want to extinguish conflict, it is impossible. It is impossible. As I have also stated elsewhere, that conflict is actually a growth industry. It has come to stay. It will remain with us, but efforts should be made to mitigate them. Efforts should be made to see how we can reduce them to the barest minimum. Or even as that, no matter how we do, these conflicts will keep occurring insofar as human beings will continue to live. After all, even the teeth and the tongue within your mouth, even though they have a symbiotic relationship, at some point, at one time or the other, they can have a conflict. And I believe that all of us, even in this platform today, one way or the other, there have been an LD relationship between our teeth and our tongue, as how we are housed in our mouth. Even though we try as much as possible not to want to allow it happen, it happens. That is to say that conflict will ultimately remain with us. But even as it remains with us, we try as much as possible to reduce them, just like the sentences I have given within the mouth. We try as much as possible to reduce how there could be friction between the teeth and the tongue. The way we do that, we can also bring it to bear on our governance structures, on our relationships with people. That way, conflict would have been mitigated. And finally, we need to ensure international burden sharing. If we share our problems, even within, when we share our problems, a problem well problematized and shared is like halfway done. So if we share our burdens in some way, I think that we will be able to mitigate all of these issues. By way of conclusion, conflict-induced migration is now shaping global stability. Both risk and opportunities for development are quite inherent in the same conflicts that as the people move. Human security-centered governance is essential. And this is actually very critical. A situation where we want to provide security, we should provide it, looking at the people, and governance should be brought closer to the people. Governance should solve problems. Governance should be people-centered. Governance should mitigate the issues that propel us to want to. Disagreements will always be there, but governance should enable us. For example, a situation where even people have become local governments unto themselves, that they have to provide their security, they have to provide their their water, they have to. That means Nigerians are becoming generally almost like a local government. But if the government that we all surrender our efforts to cater for us, provide these essential necessities, I think that we are we'll be on our way to solving the global problem of this forced migration. Regional cooperation remains also critical. Regional cooperation remains also critical. And so this paper, as a matter of fact, applied, as I said, the human security theoretical framework, and we use literature, literature to do the analysis, as I said, because the secondary data we use, and we have, the analysis were carried out using thematic and comparative methods, and drawing from all empirical examples across Africa, conflicts in the Sahel, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Middle East, Syria, and Iraq, and other regions such as Colombia and Myanmar. This paper elucidates how violence-driven mobility strains public services, fuels insecurity, exacerbates economic migration, marginalization, and reshapes social identities. It argues, as a matter of fact, that while conflict-induced migration can pose significant development challenges, strategically managed responses can mitigate instability and unlock opportunities for economic resilience and social integration. I want to say that I thank you so very much for your kind attention, and may God bless all of us.
The presenter, Professor Philip Okolu, has presented his paper on conflict-induced migration and implication for regional stability. And he has listed out the causes of conflict to us this afternoon. And he told us that there are implications for this conflict-induced migration. It actually has implication, political implication, it has security implication, economic and development pressure, social cohesion, identity politics, and so many other implications. And that's why it's crisis. And he went on that further implication is after this, people migrate from one country to the other because of conflict, that at the end of the day, the pressure on infrastructure, the economy, and the government later oversplit and causes more conflict. And that was what actually caught me there. Because at the end of the day, the citizens are running from conflict from their own country to another country, and they go to that country and meet a different form of conflict. Different form of conflict based on pressure on the economy, pressure on infrastructure, pressure on the political system, governance, and all that. And at the end of the day, if care is not taken, we'll have cases of citizens of the host country now fighting back, as we had in Ghana, we had in South Africa, and some other countries. Having said that, I want to throw the floor open as many that want to interact and react. Meanwhile, presenters, thank you very much for such a robust presentation. We really appreciate, even with the network crisis, you were still able to do that presentation. Thank you for that, sir. So,
God bless you.
Anybody to continue the.
We want to thank Professor Okoli for sharing knowledge with us, and the network that forced him into or out of our space also assisted him to return, and he did justice to his paper. That is just to kind of simplify the level of forced migration that we can go to. We were talking about an example, which is a displaced persons, camp, a government intervention, not just national, but also global intervention. And while I will not speak about the displaced persons, IDPs, uh, as a response, so to speak, or something that we need to look into in the context of induced forced migration, we can say that the university, that is National Open University of Nigeria, was a proud awardee,
Yeah.
first of a 89, excuse me, 68,000 pounds sterling grant in 2019. And then as a follow-up of about 2.1 million, I'm trying to remember the figure now, pounds, to continue to interrogate the situation of forced migration within the context of independent displaced persons zones. But having said that, I listened to Prof. So I was wondering that, the paper is general, let me put it that way, and informative. And I think I was hoping for specificity within the context of the general framing of that particular focus, regional integration or regional security, excuse me. So I would suggest that if we or Prof consider us as a publishing outlet, and we publish quite a lot. We have previous publications addressing this issue, which are, I believe, online, which you can access. Then you may want to zero in on specificity. Okay, maybe your actual paper beyond the PowerPoint address this. Then you focus for us, share with us, for instance, Niger Delta, where you are based, because you know that reality. Or share with us, for instance, the Sahel region in terms of forced migration that are, human and government induced. Or share with us even as simple as the issue of labor forced migration that you alluded to. So there's a lot to be taken from your paper, and there's a lot to learn. I want to believe that if this is part of a general work ongoing or already completed, then we need specificity. So forced migration, in my opinion, and I love the qualitative approach, is highly important to dissect. We should also must have evidence or facts so that when we present, we are speaking to the facts. I'll give an example within the general context. Issue of queuing for petroleum should not be a factor of forced migration on anyone in recent time. For instance, I was talking to my wife yesterday, and I said, for the first time, I realized that I spend more money buying gas, that is fuel, into my car. And she said she experienced the same thing. So I was checking and I look up and I saw $3 something. I said, what? That is not a function of myself or my local government or my governor. but it's a function of the reality of the world, meaning the conflict in Iran is, impacting all of us. The same thing in Nigeria. So there's a need for clarity in the context of our nation. The other thing is about, people leaving medical, or even the case of myself that was mentioned. If Prof had not mentioned my name, I would not talk about this. I want to put it to the public, for those who do not really know me very well, that personally, I was on a substantive 10 good years. I was back in Nigeria, and I forgo dollar salary.
I don't
And continuously, I'm still a visiting professor. So in my case, and I've always bordered it, it's a function of who you are, where you live. It is all about cost of living. If you choose to go to Libya, like one of my cousins, I said, your head no correct. Until you return to Nigeria, forget it, but don't call me, please, or I'll block you. Because it's unplanned, as Prof rightly mentioned. So why would you say it's your government? Why not utilize in the midst of misery? Some of us are still surviving. People were asking me, how did you survive? You must be crazy. Most of us want to japa, and you are japada. And I say, well, japa should be a function of planned, scenario, as well as intentional preparation for such events. So your papers are has really educated us. I'm not trying to represent another paper, but at the same time, I think you would do us a big favor, giving us specificity, perhaps the Niger Delta, perhaps the Sahel, perhaps even if it is Nigeria, independent displaced persons zones, or even if it is labor, then you have to be specific in terms of why and how and what they are contributing back. And I thank you again for at least giving us some insight into your perspective. Facts are sacred, as historians will say. Opinion differs. That is the mantra of my discipline. That is what informed the path of migration and global studies. And that is what is unique in our multidisciplinary approach to issues of our times and even prior to our times. And thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Professor Tijani, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Hello, sir. I'm not seeing any other hand. Let's see if we can take more comments before you react, sir.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, there's no hand up. I don't know if you want to react to the observation and comment from Professor Tijani, sir.
Yeah, yes. I rather want to say I'm not reacting. I want to only comment Prof.
Okay, sir.
For as a matter of fact, elucidating on some other areas that has actually also aroused my curiosity again to also dive further. But I think that Prof had, as a matter of fact, said if I didn't mention his name, probably he wouldn't have made that intervention. But I think that Prof was it actually forced, and that is exactly the point I made. That we need to plan for our own movement. If we don't plan, and suddenly things happen and we now move, we are causing strain to the host settlements where we are going into. And as a matter of fact, that point is being clearly made by Prof, particularly for Prof and others in that category. They planned their movement. And for example, the example Prof also cited, where his cousin, for example, was migrated to regions that are very seriously conflict driven, like Libya and the rest. You know, that's. I mean, we're not saying people should not migrate to those areas, but you may have to plan properly before you move into such areas. So the other point I want to make is Prof's mention of specificity. Yes, in about 2 areas he said so. And I think that the paper is actually also a general paper, but again, looking at even the side, looking at so many regions across the world. But again, Prof has also encouraged me further to say that we could do perhaps even another study in the Niger Delta, how people are, either moving away because in terms of this internal displacement. Because if, for example, in the Niger Delta, a situation where there is pollution, oil spills around some environments, and gas flares, in some areas, arising from these issues, and what Professor Albert will refer to as the kind of iron fist approach of conflict management, wherein the government will use the army, force, to dispel or to reduce, or put differently, to stem the conflict. Those type of situations can only degenerate into another forms of conflicts. And so I would rather want to say that Prof has further, motivated me further to see how we can cause studies in. I think that it may not be only me, but people can begin to look at some other areas, as Prof has mentioned. That would be my intervention. Hello? Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Hello? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Hello,
Presenter,
Joyce.
sir, Professor Okole. Thank you very much, sir. Before we take the next thing, I got something from your presentation, very interesting. Conflict-induced migration shapes global stability and impact on development. In fact, I tried to rephrase it and pick something at a small summary. In other words, conflict-induced migration can affect stability in the sense that it can cause instability, and it can stagnate development in such a way that they can have a counter effect that will later cause more conflict. Now, when there's more conflict, just as what Professor Tijani said, conflict is not enough reason for people. It's not enough reason for people to continue to migrate, because when you migrate to somewhere else, from your presentation, you affect the economy, you affect the infrastructure, and then you now create a kind of instability which stagnates development in that particular host country. That way, there will be a counter effect, or where we now have crisis. Now, citizens don't have to migrate again. If not, they end up keep migrating. And that's why Prof said one thing. He said that migration should be pre-informed. You have to be well informed and not just jumping from one place to the other because there's conflict. Thank you about that, sir. Everybody here, once more, thank you for coming. I want to give the director an opportunity to talk. Let me introduce, I'm not introducing him, I'm not big enough to introduce him, but the director of the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies, National Open University, Professor Samuel Iroye is online. Let me give him the floor. This is actually his program on behalf of the Vice Chancellor. Professor Samuel Iroye, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. I appreciate you for hosting the program today. I want to appreciate all our people from far and near, most especially the founding father of our center, Professor Tijani, who has never missed a time. In fact, when we were having some technical issues, I was so unhappy because I know Prof is around. So I wouldn't want anything to go wrong. Prof, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for coming. May the Lord Almighty continue to strengthen you and increase you, sir. We will take out on you for your advice, for your guidance, so that we can do better. Thank you so much, sir. I want to thank everybody. And let me inform you that next month's presentation is going to be more participatory because we're having discussants. We're going to be discussing major migration issue. And the moderator for that is going to be our father, Professor Tijani. That's going to be in the month of April. We will adequately inform you latest in the next 2 weeks. So please prepare for that. We're going to be having about 4 or 5 of our academia coming to discuss on major issues. So it's going to be an open floor for everybody. April is going to be a wonderful time. Let all of us prepare for it. Thank you for coming today. I wish you a wonderful week ahead of you. Thank you, Dr. Joyce. I hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't know, I'm not seeing any other hand up. That being the case, I think we will just close the...
Good afternoon, everybody.
Sorry. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah,
You have the floor, sir.
Yes, thank you, ma. I want to really appreciate the prof for the presentation. Actually, I'm on transit, but I had to make up my mind to join this this seminar because the topic is very attractive, and more so, like Professor Tijani spoke, I think I have a first-hand experience of the issue of induced migration. I stay in Niger State, and if you have been following the news, you will discover that there has been a lot of terrorism situation in Niger State. And some of us have a handful of people living villages where they have been known to be their fatherland, where they farm, and they have lived their life as farming as one of their major source of livelihood. Several of them had to migrate from the villages because of conflicts. Most of the conflicts is due to either religion or intertribal or land-related conflicts. And it has impacted terribly on the economy, on the development of those areas. Like I was privileged to visit one of the schools in those areas. As we speak, there are no teachers for most of the primary schools, secondary schools in those parts of Niger State, like Shiroro area. The teachers have run away because of conflicts. Then the buildings are dilapidating. And then where people migrate to, there is pressure of accommodation. So these are some of the practical experience that some of us have to grapple with when it comes to induced conflict migration. This is just to add a little of my own practical experience. I am Dr. Fadipe and currently running a sabbatical with National Open University. Thank you very, very much from the Faculty of Education.
Thank you very much, sir. That's a practical experience. That's a practical experience. Thank you. That's useful information too. Thank you very much, sir, for that. I don't know, I want to appreciate all that. There are some of our profs, professors that promised to be here and couldn't make it. Just like Professor Tijani has another double assignment, you know, the same thing Professor Akin, how can I forget? I've forgotten the surname. I just skipped me now. And promised to be here. He said he was actually, maybe he actually came in and out. He actually has another engagement too, pressing one. So I want to say thank you to everybody, including him and everybody that participated in today's webinar. We look forward to seeing you again next month. And as you prepare for the one for April, which is also going to be very robust. Okay, Professor Akim Akinwale, I just remember the name. He has been participating in this webinar and should have been here today too, but for another engagement. Thank you all. Director, thank you, sir. So we'll see all of us next month. Thank you for the presenter. Thank you very much, sir. We look forward to having your full paper when the paper is ready. with all the
No,
observations made.
no,
Thank you very much
no,
for participating in today's
no,
webinar.